Hello everybody, my name is Dan and today I have for you another tutorial video on creating textures using pencils. So, first thing we need to understand is that everything that exists has some kind of texture to it. All these materials and different surfaces each have their own properties, whether that's smooth, rough, detailed. The list can go on, but the appearance of different textures is very important in drawing because we have to create representations of all of these things so that we can bring the drawing to life, whether the intention is to make the drawing look more realistic or simply just to suggest what a material and object in the drawing might be. So today we are going to be looking at creating about 3 of what is probably the most common textures, which is wood, brick and metal. So I'll also put timestamps in the description for each of the different textures we create. With that being said, let's jump straight into the first one. Now I've quickly sketched out 3 boxes here where I'll be drawing the textures. We are going to start with wood, probably one of the most common materials out there. There's loads of different types of wood with different appearances, but here I'm going to go for an oak type of texture. I'm going to start by creating some of these horizontal lines, and these will be the grain in the wood. So you see it quite often on wooden surfaces, this arrangement of grain that creates this sort of pattern. This is definitely the priority and the focus when it comes to drawing a wooden texture. I'm using a HB pencil here to start off, and then I'll most likely switch to a 2B later and make some areas darker. It's probably worth me saying that you can also change the shade of the texture you are drawing just by making lighter or darker marks with the pencil. It's easier to create darker lines and shades with softer pencils, so use them if you want to get a darker result, and likewise if you want a lighter shade of wood, you can use harder pencils and draw more lightly on the paper. So right now I'm really focusing on drawing these smooth, natural looking lines for the grain of the wood. I'm going to speed this up a little bit and then we can get on with the next stage. So now I'm going to start drawing in some smaller lines in between the ones that we've already created. I'm always drawing these in the same direction as the other ones so that it gives a smooth finish rather than a rough appearance. Okay, we've drawn in most of these and now we have this collection of what is just all these different pencil lines going in the same direction. What we need to do now is fill in the white spaces, which is the background more or less, and to do this we just lightly sketch over what we have done and shade this in, but always in the same motion and direction as the grains of the wood that we've already created. And finally, once that is done, you can touch up some areas if needs be, but that is pretty much the wooden texture finished. Next up, we're going to be drawing brick, more like a brick wall sort of texture, so I'm trying to cover some of the most popular materials that will be more useful and that you'll probably use more often. So first of all, I'm going to lightly sketch in my wall here with each of the few bricks and the mortar in between them. So we have now what looks like a basic outline of a wall, but it doesn't look realistic, obviously it's just outlines. So let's start by going through how to create each one of these bricks. We have a few options here in terms of the results that we want. For example, if I wanted to create an old weathered brick, I'd be making more of a rough and detailed texture in comparison to a smoother brick in better condition. For this I'll try and do a mixture in between so that we can cover both of the techniques. I'm going to start off by lightly shading on each of the bricks, just ignoring the mortar for now because we can come back to that later. Once we have a base layer of shade, I can start outlining with a sharper, softer pencil like a 2B. So right now I could outline each brick as a straight line like a perfect rectangle, and it will look like it's in perfect condition, but bricks tend to be more weathered and have maybe some chips in them or some rougher edges, so here I'm just going to create those with the outlines. You can see that I'm creating more of a rough sort of style of an edge instead of that straight box like rectangle. Once that's done, start adding some darker shades over some areas of the bricks, then finally start to add some small dot-like details to the brick texture and maybe even some small finer marks to really bring out that realistic and weathered appearance. It's probably good if each brick looks completely random and none of them look the same. There isn't just one way to go about drawing them, so you can shade in different areas compared to the other ones. So I'm happy with how these appear now, and I'm going to take a lighter pencil like a 2H for the mortar that's in between. Because obviously this needs to be lighter than the bricks, so lightly fill in some of this with the pencil. Try to make the mortar that little bit darker when it's underneath a brick, so it appears as if the brick is extruding forward a little bit. Once we have this basic shading done, finish off by using a very sharp pencil and creating those fine dot-like marks, the same as we did with the bricks, to create that rough texture. Now if you need to finish these off, you can take an eraser and carefully erase some of the mortar above each brick, so again it gives that extra three-dimensional effect. But other than that, I think we are pretty much finished with this brick texture. So for this last one we are going to be creating a metal texture, and by the way I will do some more videos expanding on this subject that covers more textures and also how to apply them onto your drawings as well. So with this we are going for a smooth, shiny metal-like surface. Now this one's pretty straightforward. I'm going to take a light 2H pencil and start by shading in this whole area. Once that's done, I'm going to take a HB pencil, something that's just a little bit softer, and I'm going to create a darker area of shade in a horizontal direction. Now we are going to do a bit of blending, so you can either use a blending stump or just use your finger, it doesn't really matter that much, but lightly blend these areas until it looks all smoothed out. Try and get that darker area of shade that we created to really blend and almost fade into the lighter area. For the next step we are going to take an eraser, and I recommend using one with a fine edge like the one I'm using here. I'll put the names of all the equipment I'm using in the description. What we are going to do is start scratching away in that horizontal direction. You want to pretty much do this all over the drawing and try and get the lines that you create with the eraser as sharp and fine as possible. Then once that's done, do the exact same but in a diagonal direction. Try and make some of the lines you create longer than others. So you should end up with something that looks like this, and depending on how you want your metal surface to appear, you can always take the eraser again and completely remove some areas to give a shinier effect to it. But that concludes the drawing of this metal texture. So there we go, that was probably 3 of the most common textures there is to draw. If you enjoyed the video and found it useful, make sure you give it a like, and I can also do some other videos covering more textures and also how to apply them on some examples of other drawings. So thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.